Well, it's time to admit that we've all been sleeping on the Ruby Whelp Shell trinket, but now we need to talk about why and whether or not you should be using it. What's up, guys? My name is Steven with Level Up MMO, and this video is going to be all about the Ruby Whelp Shell trinket, which most had written off as being something that just didn't really add a lot of value to what we now know about it, thanks to a Wowhead article, which a team of people put together and tested a lot of things to figure out, so shout outs to them. But now let's talk about what they found. So before we get into exactly what you need to do, I'll just give you the numbers up front on some things so you can decide if it's worth even looking into it. According to the Wowhead post, they tested it with a relatively small amount of data so far, but can safely say that the fire shot, which is their single target ability mode, is potentially significantly better than most people assume it is. With a 6-minute Taros log that is in the current raid, the single target boss, showcasing it comfortably keeping up with Manic Grief Torch. The Manic Grief Torch is a highly sought after trinket, so the fact that it's able to do that as a self proc versus something you have to use like the Manic Grief Torch is huge. That's not all though. Testing one of the other things that you can proc with it, which is boosting a stat, they boosted on a 372 Ruby Whelp Shell the crit. So that provided a 2,235 crit rating in 12-second increments with an average uptime of 16% in Mythic Plus keys, making it one of the biggest stat buffs available from a trinket today. They then reference that a 421 Bone Maw's Big Toe provides 1,727 on roughly similar uptime. That means that something that is a much higher item level is actually giving less crit for the same amount of time on average with the data that they have. So if those numbers have gathered your attention, and they probably should have, let's talk about how you get the Ruby Whelp Shell to be what you want it to be. So essentially there are 6 different abilities that can proc with this item. You're going to have a single target damage ability, that's Fire Shot, the one that was referenced in that scenario, which targets a hostile enemy, one that fits the harm condition for macros, where there are strictly less than 3 total enemies within 6 yards of the target, including itself. Next up, you have AoE damage, which is via the Lobbing Fire Nova, which targets a hostile enemy, one that fits the harm condition for macros, where there are 3 or more total enemies within 6 yards of the target, including itself. So those are your main damage abilities that can proc from the Ruby Whelp Shell. Moving into the stat buffs, we'll have the crit buffs, which is the Sleepy Ruby Warmth, which targets yourself, where there are strictly less than 3 allies within 6 yards of you, including yourself. Allies are considered healable characters or NPCs, so these are things you need to take into consideration when you're choosing which one you're going to put some points into. Next up in the buffs is going to be the haste buff, which is under Red Wings, which works very similarly, so I'm not going to read all that, but crit buff and haste buff, you kind of have to follow the same conditions. And then we'll move into the single target healing procs, because there's going to be 2 of these, and that is Curing Whiff, which targets a friendly NPC where there are strictly less than 3 friendly healable NPCs in a 6-yard range of your target. Then next up, we'll move to the healing AoE, right? So we have damage single, we have damage AoE, we have the same for healing. This is Mending Breath, which will target a friendly NPC where there are 3 or more friendly NPCs in a 6-yard range of your target. So you're probably wondering, because you heard me say if you put points into it, how does this work? Well, you know how we thought you clicked the use and it brought the thing down and that's just kind of how it worked? No, actually, each time you do that in the right conditions, you will be able to add a priority point to the one that you want. There are 6 total points. So now let's kind of go over this. These are what they know right now work to add these points. So you can go stand within the healing target dummies in Valdrakken and cast the ability on yourself. So target yourself, click use, and that will end up allowing you to stack a point into the haste buff. If you want to do a single target one, then what you'll do is you'll find any hostile ad. That means you're gonna have a red bar, not a yellow bar, but a red bar. You'll target, you will click use, the whelp will come down, it'll say some lines, some smoke will come from its nostrils, and that will mean that you have now put one of your 6 points into the single target damage. So what this means, if you want a higher chance of doing Fire Shot, the single target, but you still want to have some of the lobbing fire from doing an AoE, you could go 4 points into single target and 2 points into the AoE. This means that there will be a stronger chance that you get the single target proc, but there's still a decent chance you get the AoE. But it is worth pointing out that they have found that even if you put all 6 points into single target, there is still a chance that it will proc the other damage ability. They didn't say that it has a chance of proccing one of the others, like healing or anything like that, but within the same restraints that you have. So if all 6 are in fire shot, there will still be a small percentage chance that it will proc the AoE. They found this during the Raz fight, but it only proc the AoE if there were 3 or more mobs. So during the ad phases is where they found that it would occasionally proc that instead, which means that's not really a bad thing. So how do you keep up with what points are where and how many proc points you have and what? I'm going to provide something that they shared, which is just a command you can put in your chat that will then pop up and tell you exactly which ones you have points in. Now, how does it work if you decide to change it? Basically, if you've already used your 6, it will take one from the highest you have and put it into where you just put it. So if you have 4 in one and 2 in another, you want to then change and add something to the heal proc, you put 1 in there, it'll drop 3 and then 2 and then 1. Either way, this means that a lot of us were very, very wrong by writing off this trinket, and it's something you may want to explore, because if it is at times keeping up with the Manic Grief Torch, this is something people should be considering, because it's not even an on-use item apart from building up your points. Now, of course, that means that you can only do it once every 24 hours, and I think it takes about 7 days to completely do it. You have to find the right thing. So if you're doing single target, right, you're going to go find a hostile ad, you're going to target it, and you're going to use it once per 24 hours up until you have the 6 stacks in that. Once you have the 6 points in that, then you have it to where it's almost always going to use the single target ability. Before you do that though, of course, there's going to be more chance that it does something else. So it's just going to take a little bit of time before it gets to exactly the way that you want it. But that wraps it up. So if this was helpful at all, then make sure you give the video a thumbs up. If you like World of Warcraft or MMO content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can always come chat with me live at twitch.tv/heartbreaker_TV. And if you want to support me directly in the best way, you can always sub over on Twitch, become a member here on YouTube. Either one is incredibly beneficial to me. Thank you all so much for watching, and good luck in your adventures.